Serious. What's the creepiest, scariest thing you've seen but no one believes you? Didn't see it but heard it. My friends and I got a cheap set of walkie-talkies from Walmart and were playing around with them in the middle of the day. There's a bit of silence as we're trying to figure out the volume, and out of nowhere there's a male voice saying, "Mayday, mayday, mayday," that comes through all of our walkie-talkies, and it definitely sounds like it from one of those aircraft headsets. We tried to answer back, but there's no response. I called non-emergency, but they said there weren't any reports of distressed aircraft or ships, and even if there were, they couldn't do anything about it. Alternatively, a couple months later I saw a plane with an engine on fire go over my campus, but apparently no one else did. My brother insists that when we were kids, our mom took us to LAX to see a 747 that had crashed onto the tarmac and broken apart, even though I have absolutely no recollection of this. He said it was burned out, broken into several pieces, and the yellow emergency slides were deployed. It was still smoking and there was a trail of debris and charred runway behind it. Apparently it was just me, my brother and my mom, despite the fact that we have another brother and two sisters who were still living at home at the time. He says he just remembers watching the plane and all the emergency workers from a chain-link fence. This makes zero sense because first of all, why the hell would our mom take us to see a tragic plane crash? She wasn't that type of person. Second of all, LAX is about an hour drive, which makes it less plausible. And third and fourth of all, my mom, she has passed since, but I asked several times about it, denies that it ever happened, and I have searched and there were no plane crashes in the area at the time. The weird thing is my brother has a freaky memory. He remembers random odd events even from when he was insanely young, mentioning things with scarily accurate detail that most people that young wouldn't remember. It was around the time that our family took a plane from LAX to Mexico to visit my dad's family, so I just chalk it up to him internalizing some fear from the flight, even though I remember us both being okay about flying. It was up until this year, I'm 30 now, was 5 at the time, the only time I'd flown in a plane. But the other thing is that for as long as I can remember, I have had intense nightmares of planes crashing. I'm either on the plane, or while I'm watching it crash near me. I've since developed an intense fear of flying. Not just of flying, but of planes in the air. There is something viscerally unnerving to me seeing these big-ass metal monstrosities flying through the air. It's almost, I don't know how to describe it, but morbidly and deeply disturbing. Anyway, every time I have one of these plane crash nightmares I think or say something like, "Oh my god, it's finally happened after all these years of dreaming about it," simply because of how absolutely real and convincing these dreams are. Sometimes I suspect I'm dreaming, but something will happen that makes me absolutely convinced that this time it's actually happening and I'm not dreaming. The fucked up thing is, if I ever do see a plane crash, or survive a plane crash, I will immediately suspect that I'm either trapped in a dream or have died, and I don't know if anyone will be able to convince me otherwise. I have some seriously fucked up issues with sleep and nightmares, though. I should probably see someone about it because it has seriously impacted my health. When I was 7 or 8, I would have a reoccurring nightmare that one of my dolls came to life, played with me, and then would try to pull me into my closet with her. I'd follow her into the closet at first, but then she'd show me this little door at the back of the closet, and my heart would start to race. I don't know what it was about that door, but I knew something bad would happen if I went through it. I'd start to struggle and try to pull away, but the doll was too strong and would start pulling me through the door. At this point in the dream, I'd always wake up screaming. The worst part was I had night terrors, so sometimes I'd wake up standing next to my closet. Every night before bed, I'd make my parents make sure there wasn't a little door at the back of my closet. There never was. Anyway, I was talking to my mom the other day and this dream came up. I'm laughing about it and how ridiculously paranoid I was about dolls in that closet, but my mom gets really quiet. She tells me the creepy part of that dream wasn't the doll, it was the fact that there used to be a little door at the back of the closet, but when I was 1 year old, they remodeled the house and put a wall where the door used to be. There's no way I could have remembered that door, but years later, I kept dreaming about it. None of my friends believe this story, but I swear it's true. I grew up on a 2-acre home with plenty of trees and room for an 8-year-old to run around. Our house also was heated in winter by a wood fireplace, so we would periodically cut down one of our own trees to save money. Well, for about 2 years there was a stump less than a foot tall near the house, and at least once a day, without fail, I would see someone standing on the stump. Usually it was out of the corner of my eye, but once or twice I looked directly at him. I always looked away quickly cause it startled me and he was gone, but my sister says she experienced the same thing. Nothing ever came of it though. Alright, buckle in. My neighbor was dying of a heart condition about 6 years ago. He knew he was, so he was giving away his valuables to people he trusted with them. Neighbor gave me his tackle box. He loved to fish. I would see him come home from fishing every day and he'd just sit on his porch and skin fish. I just put the tackle box in my closet and didn't really do anything with it since I don't fish. Anyways, soon after, he passed away in his home. Exactly a week after that, I woke up to the tackle box at the foot of my bed. Weird, but my stepdad likes to dick around, figured it was him, so I put it back. The next morning, I wake up, it's at the foot of my bed again. So, I asked my stepdad what the deal was, and he had no idea what I was talking about. To test this, I put the tackle box in a spot that he wouldn't find, nor would he attempt to get it. Under my bed, all the way in the back against the wall, and I put stuff in front of it to conceal it. Next morning, nothing. Okay, I guess it was him. Didn't give it much thought after that. 3 days pass, I wake up one morning and there it is, at the foot of my bed. Fuck. Now I'm starting to freak out. So I did what any rational person would and I went fishing with it. After I went fishing, I put the tackle box away, and it hasn't moved since then. It's still there. Just after high school, maybe 6 months or so after 9/11, I was a van driver who drove the Meals for Meals on Wheels to the place where they get packaged up and taken for home delivery. Anyway, the delivery van only had AM/FM radio and I was listening to 92.5 FM, when all of a sudden the station cuts out and a transmission that I can only describe as an American version of a numbers station began playing. It was seemingly random numbers followed by a long period of the same phrase repeated over and over again. The phrase was, "They took the crosstown bus," over and over again. None of the other drivers heard it, but man was it creepy to hear. Eventually the regular radio station came back on and they never mentioned anything about it. This happened in October of 2005. Dates of the 9th, 11th, and 16th are repeated in various places across the internet. It was heard on many stations in the Northeast U.S. Broadcasters say it was a malfunction of the Amber Alert system, but it was several times over a 2-week span in different markets. The scariest thing I saw was at the age of 16. I woke up early in the morning, 4:30-5ish a.m. Me and some friends were supposed to go on a road trip for the weekend. We had a long AF ride to one of the stops we wanted to visit. and didn't wanna be there too late. I look out my window and it's still a kinda dark outside. I walk downstairs and see wet footprints all over the house, and suddenly a big man, like 6'7". I was around 6'1" at the time, just bowled past me and out the front door. Not really creepy, but I shot at least 5 bricks and bolted upstairs to my dad. Nothing got stolen, but things were scattered all over the house. This happened to me, except I came home early from school and I caught him in the act. 2 skinny guys in all black with masks. Didn't seem to have any weapons. I was like 9 and had no idea what was going on, but I remember them saying, "Oh shit." Then they all kinda looked at me and one said, "It's a kid," and they all just bolted. It really felt like a scene from Barry. I called my mom and she called the police, and the police never found him because I told them absolutely no information because I'm a fucking idiot. We then changed all the locks, put an extra deadbolt on the front door, and that's the story of how my family became gun owners. This happened to me last year and I fully understand why no one believed me because it sounds ridiculous. Every morning, I need to wake up at 5 a.m. to get the 5:30 bus to the train station to go to university. I had to be there by 8 a.m., but I like to get there half an hour early. To get to the bus stop, I have to walk down this bike path and under this bridge to get to this quiet back street road. There is fuck all light on the bike path. This street is dead quiet. A right side of the road is a continuation of the bike path, and the left is a normal footpath with a long green hedge. One morning, I was standing there waiting for a bus and this old woman comes walking out from under the bridge. I didn't see her at first because, as I said, it was pitch black on the bike path. She crosses the road and walks up to me. She asked me if I knew where X Road was. I turned to point in the direction of the road she was looking for. I turned back and she was gone. This old woman, who was walking at a snail's pace, disappeared within 3 seconds. Growing up, I had a friend named Adam. He was never able to come out during the day, only right before all of us kids had to go home for the evening. Adam lived a few houses over, in a house with an overgrown yard. I met his parents once. They were very strange, didn't smile, and obviously didn't want me there. I remember Adam telling me that he was sick, that's why he couldn't play that much. He was a small boy, pale with dark hair. Eventually Adam stopped showing up altogether. And I eventually moved on, though I do remember going to his house a couple times to see if he could come play, and his dad just gave me this look before closing the door in my face. Later in life, I asked my sister if she remembered him. She doesn't, and according to my parents, that house was empty the entire time we lived there. I don't know who Adam was. I don't know why I so vividly remember him and his parents. As far as I can tell, he wasn't real, and yet I have perfect memories of him and his parents. About 8 years ago now, I was taking a drive out to Kansas from the East Coast. I was with a friend and we were going out to see her grandparents. Once we were about 2 hours from the grandparents' house, my friend starts outlining standard operating procedures of seeing things in and around her family's home. She seemed a bit panicky when going over everything, but I managed to calm her down. I'm skeptical of everything and assured her that the things she had seen when she was a small child were just manufactured in her imagination. She insisted that the entire family had seen these things, with the exception of her grandparents. 2 hours later, we arrive in Kansas and I'm ready to fall over because of the length of time the last leg of the trip took. We are welcomed and her mother takes me to a back bedroom, and just as she about to close the door, she stops, says, "Maybe you shouldn't stay in this room," and escorts me to another room. Okay, that was a little strange, but whatever, I'm tired. Fast forward to night number 2 at the grandparents' home. It's around 11 p.m. and my friend is crashed out on the couch watching TV. I'm in an adjacent bedroom from which I can see her laying on the couch. I nod off from the night and wake up to an old grey man that bared a resemblance to the grandfather but was not the grandfather, standing with his back to me in the doorway looking at my friend sleeping on the couch. I decided I was going to get up and confront the old grey man, and something slammed me back into the bed. I tried to get up several more times with the same result. Each time I was slammed back into the bed, a voice would repeat, "Put a seal on the door." Finally, I snapped to it's 3 a.m. and everything was normal. I must have been sleeping. It was a dream. No old grey man and my friend was fast asleep. So I start pacing around the room trying to decide how I feel about what had just happened. I glance over to my friend, her eyes are open and she says, "You seen it?" I say, "Get in the car, I can't be here right now." We spend the next 4 hours sitting in a Walmart parking lot talking about the history of her experiences in that house and comparing to my own. Okay, my nerves are not on fire anymore and we are heading back to the grandparents' home. We arrive and they're waiting for us inside. I tell them exactly what happened to me and I get, "Yeah, that's strange. We usually do seal our doors with a prayer at night, but with all the excitement we just must have forgotten." All the children have mentioned stories of things, but we have never seen them. "We are sorry you had to go through that. I'm really not sure what I've seen or experienced that night, but when I tell people they get that look of skepticism. It's obvious they don't believe me. My conclusion is that the experience was indistinguishable from reality in the moment. I don't know what that means, but it changed the way I look at things. I woke up to something. It sounded like a door shutting. At first I thought it was a dream because I could hear it in the dream as I was waking up, kinda like when someone calls your name when you're dreaming. But then I looked at my cat. His hair was completely standing up and he was beaming at my bedroom door. This was the moment when I got really scared. BC, I know animals can pick up on that shit and I thought he might know something's wrong. My cat doesn't do this type of thing unless a dog is in the room. So I looked over at the door and the only way I can describe it is it looked like it was swaying slowly, like it was breathing, like someone was standing on the other side of it trying to hear if I was awake. This swaying was accompanied by a shadow. Asterisk, I don't mean a supernatural shadow, but it looked like the shadow of a person behind the door. I was paralyzed in fear. I lied there for 5 minutes naked watching this door away. I considered yelling and trying to scare them away, but I was terrified someone might respond. I legitimately thought this was the moment where I will have to defend myself or be killed. I don't own a gun, but after 10 minutes or so I mustered up the courage to check every room in the house. I fucking checked every corner too. But there was no one there. I don't know what happened, but my evolutionary traits kicked in and I completely believed someone was outside my door. Edit: the accompanied by a shadow part was not a shadow figure, it was like the shadow you'd see if something was on the other side of a cracked door. I don't know if that makes the story less scary or what, but just wanted to be clear. This was 4 years ago. As I was walking on the sidewalk on a busy afternoon, I saw a suspicious man about 18 yo. He was 10 meters away and walking what it looked like towards me. I kept my eyes on him despite the fact that he wasn't looking directly at me. His eyes were roaming, jumping from an object to an object. As we approached one another, half a meter away from each other, he takes out a knife and tries to stab me in my left side. He wasn't really fast, so I easily dodged it and immediately turned to see who is he, or if he is trying to stab me again. To my surprise, he continues walking, and after a couple of meters he stops, turns around, smiles and gives me thumbs up, then he continues walking in the opposite direction. Till this day I don't know who he was, what he wanted, and even my family doesn't believe me, because if someone wanted to stab you, you can't stop him. You aren't experienced enough to dodge it like that, and something of that kind. The description of his behavior made me think maybe he was on drugs, but holy crap, that is terrifying. This makes me sound fucking crazy, but anyways. It was a warm summer morning back when I was a kid. I was standing in our hallway, putting on my shoes, when I randomly peeked into our living room and saw a see-through male figure surrounded by rainbow-colored lights standing right in the middle of the living room. He was reading a book and didn't seem to notice me. I thought it was weird, but I didn't feel scared or anything. It felt like the room was filled with a warm, loving energy, if that makes sense. I kinda just shrugged it off and went about my day, probably because I was too young to really understand what I'd seen. A few days later, when my mom tucked me into bed, she read me a bedtime story about a kid who meets an angel or something like that. Don't remember the story exactly, but what is interesting is the author's description of what that angel looked like. It was exactly the same as the strange rainbow man I had seen in our living room a couple of days before. It even said that angels will often visit humans surrounded by a strong, rainbow-colored lightning and manifest themselves while reading a book. I casually blurted out, "Oh, I've seen an angel then." And my mom was like, "You have? That's great." And we didn't talk more about that for a while, until one day where I randomly asked my mom if I could see a picture of my granddad who died unexpectedly while my mom was pregnant with me. She found an old family album and we looked through pictures of my parents' wedding that happened exactly 1 year before I was born. There was a picture of 3 or 4 people sitting together, laughing and having a great time at the party. I immediately pointed out the guy who sat in the middle and said, "How funny. He looks just like the angel I saw!" Exclamation mark. And my mom's face turned white as a ghost. She was just about to tell me that this was indeed my deceased grandfather, who I never got to meet. I'm very convinced it was him visiting me.